For the first time in my life, my signal is none. Are we sure it's Tuesday? Yeah, it's a cat. It's my cat. This is Bartholomew, who's my buddy. Now the signal's tanking. I see what it is. Give me the slightest sliver of hope, and then take it away a minute in. It showed green. It showed green, like my signal is good. And then it tanked. So it's Tuesday. I'm so sorry I missed last Tuesday. It did not go well for me. Probably because the weather here has been so terrible. And as most of you know, I work at night and it's storming and you have wet socks for 6 hours. You kind of don't. You don't stay healthy. My throat started to hurt and I was taking vitamin C and I was like, I feel like trash. And then I woke up on Tuesday and I was like, this is not. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's one thing that I always appreciate you guys. Every time I'm like, I need a break because I've been doing a lot of stuff and I'm getting kind of burnout. And then y'all are like, yeah, take a break. Get out of here. Throw your phone. Signal's tanking and I'm unsure why. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can. Better? Worse? I don't know. There. Good to see you. There? Okay. Okay. What? If I have to go reset the router again, I'll do it. I don't want to, but I'll do it. Ray, good to see you. For a second, when I first started, a bunch of names that I was not familiar with showed up, and I was like, what's going on? What's happening? Yes, I do. Also, if Emmy is here, is Emmy here? Literally everyone's live is acting up. Good to know. Good to know. If Emmy is here, I wanted to thank Emmy. Look, Emmy sent me a bunch of cat treats, stuff for Dad, and also calamari. Look at him. Look at him. So cute. It's my favorite. Anyway. Keep doing you, little buddy. Anyway. I'm gonna put him back in his spot. His special spot. Okay. Anyway, he's my favorite. And I'm not in cosplay today because a majority of the day I was doing stuff adjacent to cosplay stuff that I'm working on. Prop maintenance, some wig styling, cleaning up this trash over here, cleaning up this room. It looks a lot better. Mac attack, good. I'm glad Mac's here. Mac made it. I saw on the Discord you might not make it, so. But it's cool. If you gotta just drop in to say hi, I appreciate you. And also, I'm hoping that everything goes all right with the future uploads. I think I'm not sure what TikTok's been on lately, but 9 and 10 of the last book were. TikTok did not want to let me have those lives. One kept corrupting at around 11 minutes every time I tried to upload it to YouTube. It would download, and I would have like the timestamp of the full length of it. And I would like scroll through and make sure there was video on all of it, so it wasn't like, it was fine. And then I would go to upload it to YouTube, and it would be 11 minutes long. And I was like, why? Why would you do this to me? So, and then 10, the rest of 10, it told me that I violated community guidelines, but it didn't tell me that during the live. We made it all the way through the live. The live went fine. I got no notice. I got no warning. Nothing. And then after I was done, it was like, you violated community guidelines, so you can't have your live. And I was like, you didn't even tell me that. I didn't even get a violation. If you go to my violations tab, there's nothing. So I was like, when? What did I do? Pray tell. TikTok. It'd be really cool if you could let me know. But they did not. And I just didn't get that one. So I had to re-record both 9 and 10. And 10 was easily the longest chapter of book 1. So it's up there now. I'm sure, I know some people have noticed because it's got views on it. If it starts, and I had a devil of a time editing that because it kept corrupting and making me sound like a robot. If you hear what sounds like a robot reading it for a while, let me know so I can fix it. If it turns into alien radio, like someone's playing a theremin very badly, let me know. TikTok be losing its mind. Yes. YouTube is striking. What? No reason, no explanation. Yeah, I was unable to post a draft earlier. And so that is not the, if you notice, today is the one day of the entire week that I have, that I didn't post a draft. And it was because when I went to go post it, it didn't let me. So I have no idea what's going on with TikTok right now, but if YouTube is also acting up, I don't know what's been going on. It's kind of crazy. I'm trying to stay optimistic about things. I'm really glad that I never truly started trying to make a career out of this or like make a living off of this. Because I know, some people who do count on that money and are content creators and make a living off of TikTok. And to have that hang in the balance right now, I couldn't imagine. No, Toshi, it's all my drafts? What's all your drafts? Wait, are all your drafts gone? Is that what you're saying? Because mine wouldn't post them. Well, I take that back. It might have let me post them, but it kept disregarding all the edits I was trying to make. And I just ended up not posting. It wasn't saving them. But if there's drafts issues today, I'm glad I wasn't trying to film content because I would have been so frustrated. I'm not sure what's going to happen now, but I'm enjoying this while it's happening. So if TikTok goes away, I'll still be on Instagram and I'll still be on YouTube, I guess. I can continue to make content there if you'd like. I believe I can go live on YouTube now. So at least we'll be able to finish the book if y'all want. I am not super stoked about Instagram. Never really have been. I still haven't updated it. I have so many pictures that I've just been hanging on to. And I'm like, I need to post those to Instagram. And then I forget because I'm like, Instagram. And then I just don't want to do it. So then I don't do anything on Instagram. What's my YouTube? It's under Anxious Undertaker. It's also linked in my TikTok bio. So you can find it there. Mostly it's just these lives and recordings of books that I've done audio for. Not the actual audiobook work. I have never leaked that. All the work that I've been paid to do on audiobooks is trash, but all the ones that I like to do for fun are on YouTube. Oh, we're just chatting right now about anything, catching up. Yeah, notice you only just watched the vids we sent you. I have I have TikToks I need to catch up on. I largely only, whenever I check my Instagram, I'll just check what y'all send me and then I get off Instagram. I don't actually do anything on Instagram. I never do. I should, but I don't. So now if TikTok goes away, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I might stop. I'll just be walking around my house in cosplay for funsies. No content here. I don't know. So we'll see. But in reality, I feel a whole lot worse for people who like depend on that sort of income. I hope it doesn't happen. If you've read the entirety of the bill, it's a lot more alarming than just TikTok. I don't want to bring everybody down, but look into the particulars of it. And to be honest, like, we haven't really known how to deal with the internet as a country since we came up with it. Like, there's been very little laws or regulation passed as to how to use it. It's been kind of a free-for-all, and it's been up to particular companies and websites and platforms to set the standard for what they want their website to be, instead of any sort of overarching regulatory body at any one given time. Like, there's different rules on TikTok than, say, for YouTube and Instagram, and they all sort of correlate to the same thing, but there are some things you can't put on some websites and some things you can put on other websites. And ownership and property is highly debated once it reaches the internet. And we haven't really known how to handle it, and I don't think we're handling it well now. I mean, if you've seen any of all the trials, it's kind of nonsense. Half of them don't even know what Wi-Fi does, and you can tell. They come off like your grandfather who's never used a smartphone before, which is not who you want making legislation about something they barely understand. Yeah, I'm kind of over it. I'm just trying to find my happy place in the in-between time. I'm like, well, cosplaying makes me happy. I'm going to continue to do it. And if y'all still want to watch me after TikTok, I'll be on Instagram more, I guess. I don't know. It's up to you. I'm going to still do it in my house regardless. But if y'all want to watch, I guess we'll have to find a different platform to do it on if this comes to pass. Yeah, I love Game Theory. I might have watched that one. I'm not sure. I don't religiously follow every single video they put out. I kind of cherry pick which ones I'm like, I like that one. But I'll have to watch it. I don't know which one it was, but Dad. Glad you're here, Dad. We're still gonna play video games, right? I'm sorry I fell asleep on you last week. I was very tired. I fell asleep on Dad last week. He came over on Tuesday and I just fell asleep. Also, all the stuff that Emmy sent you is still here, and I have to give it to you. What's my favorite cosplay out of the ones that I've done? Or of the ones that I've done, I like Johannes the best. No one knows what it's from. except for the people who've been following my lives. Like, we've read the entire series, and they know who Johannes is, but nobody else knows who it is, and I get very little traction on those videos, but it makes me personally very happy. And I like Johannes the most. That's been my favorite book series for a long time, and that one feels the most personally satisfying to me. And if you don't know what that's about, you can check my YouTube and listen to all of it. Okay, that's fine. I felt kind of bad because I tanked. I fell asleep, and then I woke up, and Dave was like, "Dad's gone," and I was like, "What? What do you mean? Did he take his stuff?" And he was like, "I don't know." I do tag them as book talk. You haven't been reading the tags. I have. I slept so hard. It was marathon sleeping. I rarely sleep that hard, so I woke up super satisfied with myself. I was like, man, that was a nap. That was a nap. I just took a successful nap for the first time in a long time. Normally, once I'm up, I find it hard to go to sleep, so then I just felt so bad. I just passed out on the couch. Also, that couch is seriously uncomfortable, so that's even more of an achievement. I never expect to fall asleep on that couch because it's super uncomfortable. You did. Came over with a bunch of Indian food and then feed me until I pass out. Oh, I'm out of water. I did not refill this before I started this live. It's okay. I have an iced coffee over here. All right, so we finished book 1. And if you don't know what we're reading, I don't just sit here and talk about nonsense the whole time. That would be boring to me, and also I assume to you, but you know, I'm not sure. But we're reading a book. That's what we normally do. I read you a book. Some say my voice is very soothing and calming, and I'm good for putting people to sleep. So, and you know what? As far as legacies go, I like that one. So we've been reading through Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Home. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, but we finished that one. Now, it's part of the same series, but this one's called The Hollow City, so if you're confused. I like the cover in this one. Okay. And we are right at the beginning. If you've never read Miss Peregrine's, well, good luck for you. My YouTube has the entire first book on there, so you can go listen to it. You can go get the book yourself. It's by Ransom Riggs. I really recommend it. I'm, advocating for you to give this author money. I think it probably helps them survive and stay alive. So you should do that. You could also look up probably a better quality audio on Audible or something, but it's whatever you want to do. 2 of those recordings I put a lot of work and effort into. Still might sound like alien radio. Have not gone back and checked after the final edit. And I think there's 2 instances where I absolutely couldn't edit out. You can hear Pond making noise under the desk. So good luck on that scavenger hunt. And another one, probably more likely you'll find, is the birds going on a whole journey in their cage. I could not edit that out. It's just them flapping for a second, but it's so loud, and I could not. Anyway, so enjoy that. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get into it. If you need a small recap, currently the Peculiar Children have lost their home. The loop did not reset. The bomb blew up their house. Miss Peregrine is stuck as a bird, and they need to get off this island as quickly as possible because their slightly afraid, very afraid, that more whites know where they are and will show up to come after them if they don't leave. And also, they need Miss Peregrine to change back into a human, and they don't really know how to do that either. So they're scouting for help. And they're in a boat, so... Someone's already found the pond Easter egg. Great. Awesome. Anyway. There's also pond purring at the end. I put that clip in there for you guys since you guys seemed chill with it. Anyway, so who's ready to start book 2, The Hollow City? Are we ready? Do we need a minute? One following note. I also was unable to really predict about how much I should break this up because we have an uneven amount of chapters. So I pretty much am going by I'll decide in the car sort of mentality. So we're just going to figure out how long this live is going to be. This is part 1, chapter 1. And there's a little picture of them in the boat. Hold on. Should do. Crimson, absolutely not. We're not doing a 24-hour live. Vetoed. Vetoed. We rowed out through the harbor, past bobbing boats, weeping rust from their seams, past juries of silent seabirds roosting atop the barnacled remains of sunken docks, past fishermen who lowered their nets to stare frozenly as we slipped by, uncertain whether we were real or imagined, a procession of water-borne ghosts, or ghosts soon to be. We were 10 children and 1 bird in 3 small and unsteady boats, rowing with quiet intensity straight out to sea, the only safe harbor for miles receding quickly behind us, craggy and magical in the blue-gold light of dawn. Our goal, the rutted coast of mainland Wales, was somewhere before us, but only dimly visible, an inky smudge squatting along the far horizon. We rode past the old lighthouse, tranquil in the distance, which only last night had been the scene of so many traumas. It was there that, with bombs exploding around us, we had nearly drowned, nearly been torn apart by bullets, that I had taken a gun and pulled its trigger and killed a man. An act still incomprehensible to me, that we had lost Miss Peregrine and got her back again, snatched from the steel jaws of a submarine, though the Miss Peregrine who was returned to us was damaged, in need of help we didn't know how to give. She perched now on the stern of our boat, watching the sanctuary she'd created slip away, more lost with every oar stroke. Finally, we rowed past the breakwater and into the great blank open, and the glassy surface of the harbor gave way to little waves that chopped at the sides of our boats. I heard a plane threading the clouds high above us and let my oars drag, neck craning up, arrested by a vision of our little armada from such a height. This world I had chosen, and everything I had in it, and all our precious, peculiar lives contained in 3 splinters of wood adrift upon a vast, unblinking eye of the sea. Mercy. Here's a net picture. Little boat. Our boat slid easily through the waves, 3 abreast, a friendly current bearing us coastward. We rowed in shifts, taking turns at the oars to stave off exhaustion, though I felt so strong that for nearly an hour I refused to give them up. I lost myself in the rhythm of the strokes, my arms tracing long ellipses in the air as if pulling something toward me that refused to come. Hugh manned the oars opposite me, and behind him, at the bow, sat Emma, her eyes hidden beneath the brim of a sun hat, head bent toward a map spread across her knees. Every so often she'd look up from her map to consult the horizon, and just the sight of her face in the sun gave me energy I didn't know I had. I felt like I could row forever, until Horace shouted from one of the other boats to ask how much ocean was left between us and the mainland, and Emma squinted back toward the island and then down at her map, measuring with spread fingers, and said somewhat doubtfully, 4 miles? But then Millard, who was also in our boat, muttered something in her ear, and she frowned, and turned the map sideways, and frowned again, then said, I mean 5. As the words left her mouth, I felt myself and saw everyone else wilt a little. 5 miles, a journey that would have taken an hour in the stomach-churning ferry that had brought me to Cairnholm weeks ago. A distance easily covered by an engine-powered boat of any size. Roughly 1 mile less than my out-of-shape uncles ran on odd weekends for charity, and only a bit more than my mother boasted she could manage during rowing machine classes at her fancy gym. But the ferry between the island and the mainland wouldn't start running for another 30 years. And rowing machines weren't loaded down with passengers and luggage, nor did they require constant course corrections just to stay pointed in the right direction. Worse still, the ditch of water we were crossing was treacherous, a notorious ship swallower. 5 miles of moody, unchangeable sea, its floor fanned with greening wrecks and sailors' bones, and lurking somewhere in the fathoms' deep darkness, our enemies. Those of us who worried about such things assumed the whites were nearby, somewhere below us in that German submarine, waiting. If they didn't already know we'd fled the island, they'd find out soon enough. They hadn't gone to such lengths to kidnap Miss Peregrine only to give up after one failed attempt. The warships that inched along like centipedes in the distance, and the British planes that kept watch overhead made it too dangerous for the submarine to surface in broad daylight. But come nightfall, we'd be easy prey. They would come for us and take Miss Peregrine and sink the rest. So we rowed, our only hope that we could reach the mainland before nightfall reached us. We rowed until our arms ached and our shoulders knotted. We rowed until the morning breeze stilled and the sun blazed down as through a magnifying glass, and sweat pooled around our collars, and I realized no one had thought to bring fresh water, and that sunblock in 1940 meant standing in the shade. We rowed until the skin wore away from the ridges of our palms, and we were certain we absolutely couldn't row another stroke, but then did, and then another, and another. "You're sweating buckets," Emma said. "Let me have a go at the oars before you melt away." Her voice startled me out of a daze. I nodded gratefully and let her switch into the oar seat, but 20 minutes later, I asked for it back again. I didn't like the thoughts that crept into my head while my body was at rest. Imagine scenes of my grandfather waking to find me of my father waking to find me gone from our rooms on Cairnholm. Emma's baffling letter in my place. The panic that would ensue. Memory flashes of terrible things I'd witnessed recently. A monster pulling me into its jaws. My former psychiatrist falling to his death. a man buried in a coffin of ice, torn momentarily from the next world to croak into my ear with half a throat. So I rode, despite my exhaustion, and a spine that felt like it might never bend straight again, and hands rubbed raw from friction, and tried to think of exactly nothing. Those leaden oars both a life sentence and a life raft. Bronwyn, seemingly inexhaustible, rowed one of the boats all by herself. Olive sat opposite, but was no help. The tiny girl couldn't pull the oars without pushing herself up into the air, where a stray gust of wind might send her flying away like a kite. So Olive shouted encouragement while Bronwyn did the work of 2, or 3, or 4, if you took into account all the suitcases and boxes weighing down their boat, stuffed with clothes and food and maps and books and a lot of less practical things too, like several jars of pickled reptile hearts sloshing in Enoch's duffel bag, or the blown-off front doorknob to Miss Peregrine's house, a memento Hugh had found in the grass on our way to the boats and decided he couldn't live without. Or the bulky pillow Horace had rescued from the house's flaming shell. It was his lucky pillow, he said, and the only thing that kept his paralyzing nightmares at bay. Other items were so precious that the children clung to them even as they rode. Fiona kept a pot of wormy garden dirt pressed between her knees. Millard had striped his face with a handful of bomb-pulverizing brick dust, an odd gesture that seemed part mourning ritual. If what they kept and clung to seemed strange, part of me sympathized. It was all that they had left of their home. Just because they knew it was lost didn't mean they knew how to let it go. After 3 hours of rowing like galley slaves, distance had shrunk the island to the size of an open hand. It looked nothing like the foreboding cliff-ringed fortress I had first laid eyes upon a few weeks ago. Now it seemed fragile, a shard of rock in danger of being washed away by the waves. "Look," Enoch shouted, standing up in the boat next to ours. "It's disappearing." A spectral fog enshrouded the island, blanking it from view, and we broke from rowing to watch it fade. "Say goodbye to our island," Emma said, standing and removing her big hat. "We may never see it again." "Farewell, island," said Hugh. "You were so good to us." Horace set his oar down and waved. "Goodbye, house. I shall miss all your rooms and gardens, but most of all, I shall miss my bed." "So long, Loop," Olive sniffed. "Thank you for keeping us safe all these years." "Good years," said Bronwyn. "The best I've known." I, too, said a silent goodbye to a place that had changed me forever, and the place that, more than any graveyard, would forever contain the memory and the mystery of my grandfather. They were linked inextricably, he and that island, and I wondered, now that both were gone, if I would ever really understand what had happened to me, what I had become, was becoming. I had come to the island to solve my grandfather's mystery, and in doing so I had discovered my own. Watching Cairnholm disappear felt like watching the only remaining key to that mystery sink beneath the dark waves. And then the island was simply gone, swallowed up by a mountain of fog, as if it had never existed. Before long, the fog caught up to us. By increments we were blinded, the mainland dimming and the sun fading to a pale white bloom, and we turned circles in the eddying tide until we'd lost all sense of direction. Finally, we stopped and put our oars down and waited in the doldrummy quiet, hoping it would pass. There was no use going any further until it did. "I don't like this," Bronwyn said. If we wait too long, it'll be night, and we'll have worse things to reckon with than bad weather." Then, as if the weather had heard Bronwyn and decided to put us in our place, it turned really bad. A strong wind blew up, and within moments our world was transformed. The sea around us whipped into white-capped waves that slapped at our hulls and broke into our boats, sloshing cold water around our feet. Next came rain, hard as little bullets on our skin. Soon we were being tossed around like rubber toys in a bathtub. "Turn into the waves," Bronwyn shouted, slicing at the water with her oars. "If they broadside us, we'll flip for sure." But most of us were too spent to row in calm water, let alone a boiling sea, and the rest were too scared even to reach for the oars, so instead we grabbed for the gunwales and held on for dear life. A wall of water plowed straight into us. We climbed the massive wave, our boats turning nearly vertical beneath us. Emma clung to me, and I clung to the oarlock. Behind us, Hugh held onto the seat with his arms. We crested the wave like a roller coaster, my stomach dropping into my legs, and as we raced down the far side, everything in our boat that wasn't nailed down, Emma's map, Hugh's bag, the red roller suitcase I'd lugged with me since Florida, went flying out over our heads and into the water. There was no time to worry about what had been lost, because initially we couldn't even see the other boats. When we'd resumed an even keel, we squinted into the maelstrom and screamed our friends' names. There was a terrible moment of silence before we heard voices call back to us, and Enoch's boat appeared out of the mist, all 4 passengers abroad, waving their arms at us. "Are you all right?" I shouted. "Over there," they called back. "Look over there." I saw that they weren't waving hello, but directing our attention to something in the water, some 30 yards away, the hull of an overturned boat. "That's Bronwyn and Olive's boat," Emma said. It was upside down, its rusty bottom to the sky. There was no sign of either girl around it. "We have to get closer," Hugh shouted, and forgetting our exhaustion, we grabbed the oars and paddled towards it, calling their names into the wind. We rode through a tide of clothes ejected from split-open suitcases, every swirling dress we passed resembling a drowning girl. My heart hammered in my chest, and though I was soaked and shivering, I hardly felt the cold. We met Enoch's boat at the overturned hull of Bronwyn's and searched the water together. "Where are they?" Horace moaned. "Oh, if we've lost them." "Underneath," Emma said, pointing at the hull. "Maybe they're trapped underneath it." I pulled one of my oars from its lock and banged it against the overturned hull. "If you're in there, swim out," I shouted. "We'll rescue you." For a terrible moment there was no response, and I could feel any hope of recovering them slipping away. But then, from the underside of the overturned boat, there was a knock in reply. And then a fist smashed through the hull, wood chips flying, and we all jumped in surprise. "It's Bronwyn!" Emma cried. "They're alive!" With a few more strikes, Bronwyn was able to knock a person-sized hole in the hull. I extended my oar to her, and she grabbed it, and with Hugh and Emma and me all pulling, we managed to drag her through the churning water and into our boat, just as hers sank, vanishing beneath the waves. She was panicked, hysterical, shouting with breath she didn't have to spare, shouting for Olive, who hadn't been under the hull with her. She was still missing. "Olive! Got to get Olive!" Bronwyn sputtered once she tumbled into the boat. She was shivering, coughing up seawater. She stood up in the pitching boat and pointed into the storm. "There!" she cried. "See it?" I shielded my eyes from the stinging rain and looked, but all I could see were waves and fog. "I don't see anything." "She's there!" Bronwyn insisted. "The rope!" Then I saw what she was pointing at. Not a flailing girl in the water, but a fat thread of woven hemp trailing up from it, barely visible in all the chaos. A strand of taut brown rope extended up from the water and disappeared into the fog. Olive must have been attached to the other end, unseen. We paddled to the rope and Bronwyn reeled it down, and after a minute Olive appeared from the fog above our heads. One end of the rope knotted around her waist. Her shoes had fallen off when the boat slipped, but Bronwyn had already tied Olive to the anchor line, the other end of which was resting on the sea floor. If not for that, she surely would have been lost in the clouds by now. Olive threw her arms around Bronwyn's neck and crowed, "You saved me! You saved me!" They embraced, the sight of them putting a lump in my throat. "We ain't out of danger yet," said Bronwyn. "We still gotta reach shore before nightfall, or our troubles have only just begun." The storm had weakened some, and the sea's violent chop died down, but the idea of rowing another stroke, even in a perfectly calm sea, was unimaginable now. We hadn't made it even halfway to the mainland, and already I was hopelessly exhausted. My hands throbbed. My arms felt heavy as tree trunks. Not only that, but the endless diagonal rocking of the boat was having an undeniable effect on my stomach, and judging from the greenish color of the faces around me, I wasn't alone. "We'll rest a while," Emma said, trying to sound encouraging. "We'll rest and bail out the boats until the fog clears." "Fog like this has a mind of its own," said Enoch. "It can go days without breaking. It'll be dark in a few hours, and then we'll have to hope we can last until morning without the whites finding us. We'll be utterly defenseless." "And without water," said Hugh. "Or food," added Millard. Olive raised both hands in the air and said, "I know where it is." "Where what is?" said Emma. "Land. I saw it when I was up at the end of the rope." Olive had risen above the fog, she explained, and briefly caught a clear view of the mainland. "Fat lot of good that does," grumbled Enoch. "We've circled back on ourselves a half-dozen times since you were dangling up there." "Then let me up again." "Are you certain?" Emma asked her. "It's dangerous. What if a wind catches you or the rope snaps?" Olive's face went steely. "Reel me up," she repeated. "When she gets like this, there's no arguing," said Emma. "Fetch the rope, Bronwyn." "You're the bravest little girl I ever knew," Bronwyn said, then set to working. She pulled the anchor out of the water and up into our boat, and with the extra length of rope it gave us, we lashed together our two remaining boats so they wouldn't be separated again, then reeled Olive back up through the fog and into the sky. There was an odd, quiet moment when we were all staring at a rope in the clouds, heads thrown back, waiting for a sign from heaven. Enoch broke the silence. "Well?" he called, impatient. "I can see it," came the reply, Olive's voice barely a squeak over the white noise of waves. "Straight ahead." "Good enough for me," Bronwyn said, and while the rest of us clutched our stomachs and slumped uselessly in our seats, she clambered into the lead boat and took the oars and began to row, guided only by Olive's tiny voice, an unseen angel in the sky. "Left, more left, not that much." And like that, we slowly made our way towards land, the fog pursuing us always, its long gray tendrils like the ghostly fingers of some phantom hand, ever trying to draw us back, as if the island couldn't quite let us go either. I do too. That's the end of chapter 1. I'm out of water, so I'm drinking an iced coffee. Okay. Yeah, I love Olive. Olive's one of my favorites. I like Olive and Claire. They're so sweet. We're taking a minor intermission so I can vape a little bit. So yeah, the first couple of chapters, mainly the first and second one, are them being stuck in the water. So there were a lot of people who were like, I never made it past the second book. And I'm like, well, we're going to knock it all out tonight. The water. Get myself more water. I have an iced coffee. I've drank so much water today. I've drank like 2 or 3 of these so far. Of water. Not coffee. I only have 1 other coffee today. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is only my second coffee, and this is like been my 3rd water. I've been cleaning in here all day, so. Earlier, it was sweater weather. When I woke up this morning, it was sweater weather. And then this is the Bones eggnog. I had Dave specifically when he went to the grocery. I was like, hey, can you get... and I don't often ask for like a specific kind of like coffee creamer. A lot of the time I'll use like syrups and oat milk and like blend out myself. But I was like, get the peppermint mocha coffee mate specifically. And he was like, okay, I don't know if they'll have that. It's out of season. I was like, try and find it. If you can find it, great. If you don't worry about it. And so he brought it back and he was like, I found it. And I was like, cool, because it's going in this eggnog. Because I made the Bones, the eggnog one, and I have so many other Christmas flavors, and I was like, I want to try the eggnog with them. Just a little bit, because if you overdo it, the peppermint overwhelms it. But thank you. Aw, hi, Toby. Tell Toby I say hi. But yeah, so that one is the eggnog Bones coffee with oat milk and like a little bit of that peppermint mocha. It's really good. Tastes like Christmas. It tastes more Christmas than actual Christmas. Aw, Toby. Swiftblood. I never got to confirm this. I wanted to confirm this because did you and Toby send Scout dog treats? Because I went to go check my P.O. box because someone told me they were sending me something, and I went in there and I was like, was it dog treats? And they were like, no. And it was from Emmy, and Emmy was like, that was not what was in there. No. I was like, oh, okay, wrong one. Someone else must have sent these. And then I was like, Swiftblood did make a joke at one point. So I wasn't sure who did it, but I was assuming it was you. And I didn't get a chance to clarify because I've been running around here like crazy. But if it was you, thank you. Tell Toby I said thank you. Whoever sent me dog treats, thank you. I gave Scout one, and he immediately went bonkers. I gotta get it on film next time, because he does this cute thing where, like, you give him a treat, and he'll be so gentle, because we've trained him that way. So he'll just sort of, like, look at it until you tell him he can have it, and then he'll just, like, ever so gently remove it from your fingertips, and then he takes off. And then goes and buries it in his bed. He won't even eat the entire thing immediately. He'll chomp on it and then he'll bury it in his bed for later. And then I gotta clean those sheets. I gotta get it on film next time. Because I gave him one so he could try it. But I gotta do another one so I can film him and send it to you. Oh, it's so nice. Tell Toby thank you. Expect a video of Scout enjoying his present. Also, Emmy sent a bunch of toys to Pond, so I'm gonna try and get that on film too. Because I feel like it would be adorable if Pond would not stop every time I point a camera. My cats are like the weirdest. Like, they're like, the minute you point a phone at them, they stop whatever they're doing and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, did you want me to do something interesting? And they'll just stare at me like they know I'm filming them. It's so disappointing. I love getting sent cat videos all the time, and you'd think I would make cat videos from the amount of cat content that I watch all the time. And the reason I don't is because my cats are very aware when they are being watched, and they stop everything cute, interesting, or funny that they have ever done in their lives and just stare at you. So disappointing. I'm gonna get them one day. I'm gonna set up a hidden camera. And one of the things that I've kept kind of shelving for reasons, but I want to go back to eventually. I'll get around to it, but I do want to do yoga as Shinzo, and eventually I will do that. But the thing is that every time I do yoga, the cat thinks she is involved. Like, she's necessary. And so I'm like, if I filmed it, would she leave me alone? Like, would she let me do what I'm trying to do? Because a lot of the time it's fine, but sometimes it can get quite disruptive. Like, I'm in like a pose where the back of my head is exposed, and she's like, it's hair time now. And you know what my cat does with hair, so my cat will come up and just start, and I'm like, Pawn, Pawn, I'm in the middle of something. Please don't do that. And she'll just keep going because she doesn't understand English words. So I'm like, would that stop that? Or would I actually get funny content on camera for once that I can post and have people enjoy? And cat yoga. Honestly, if there was ever a character I would believe would be into any sort of animal yoga, it would be cat yoga, and it would be Shinzo. It kind of would be. Most of the time, when she's not directly assaulting me, it's totally okay. Like, she'll climb up on my back sometimes when I'm trying to do stuff, and I'm like, okay, you're fine there. Like, don't get comfortable. I'm about to move, but go off, I guess. Sometimes she'll just lay on the end of the mat and meow at me every time she thinks I'm in pain. Which is somewhat helpful. She's a delight normally, but sometimes she'll scratch me in the neck, and you don't know why. Yoga with Pawn featuring Shinzo. That's exactly what it would be. I just have to get the space to be able to film it. Because if I can set up something in the living room. I'm back. Law fell asleep. Glad you're back. Started a poll. Pond. What is happening? Did you just start a poll in this? What happened? What was the poll? It closed immediately. I didn't even get to vote. What was this about? Swiftlet is taking over this live. Is there a poll going on right now? Is that what's happening, or was that an accident? I don't know. Now I want to know what Swiftlet did. How did you do that? I would have to touch stuff. Oh, well, there's a there's a poll. Things have gotten so interesting. There's only 3 options. Guess, hell yes, and pond. And we have hell yes and pond tying at 50%. I don't. I would love to get you more pond content. How do I do this? How do I get this off my screen? No, wait. Oh, wait. I didn't mean to do that. I'm trying to get... Okay, we got it. No. No, stop. Guys. Oh, there's an X over here. Okay, that's how we get it. I was like looking for a button. It was just a minor option. Hold on. Did we get it? Okay. I hear you. I hear you. I would love to get you more pond content. No, you're fine. The kitties love their gifts. I got to swing over to Nodi's and drop off all the stuff for Alice. They were very excited. They say thank you. And Dad has to come and get his tonight because I fell asleep on him last Tuesday. And I mentioned there was stuff for him, but I didn't mention that I set it next to the back door for him. And then I fell asleep. And then I woke up later and Dave was like, Dad left. And I was like, did he take his stuff? And he was like, I don't know. And it's still back there by the back door with the chili and the cat trees. And I was like, dang it. I have to remember to tell him that this is his. It's labeled. Anyway. So he's gonna leave with it tonight. I want to get some good content for you. Yeah, I did. I want to get some content with those cat toys. It looks like a little sushi tray. It's so cute. And I absolutely adore Kaminari over here. Everybody knows Kaminari is like my favorite character, actually. Secretly not so secret. I love him. I love him. He's so nice. He's gonna stay. He's gonna stay in the place of honor in the shot. Actually, I love him. He's so adorable. Thank you so much. Hey, what is up? I'm so glad you got to drop in for a little bit. I'm sorry you guys always have to work. But then again, I end up missing a lot of your content because it's incredibly unoriginal. I never claimed to be original. I don't. What, man? This was an accident. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's okay. I'm just glad we have this mutual respect of like, I'm sorry I keep missing your content. I am an adult who has a job. So I feel like that's kind of mine and Nodi's relationship. Like, also, like, hey, did you see the thing that I sent you? No. No, but we're still friends and we're never gonna see each other. Being an adult is hard. All right. Who is down for chapter 2? Are we? That's fine, Nico, man. You're good. Have fun at work. Chapter 2. Our twin hulls ground to a halt in the rocky shallows. We hove up onto shore just as the sun was dimming behind acres of gray clouds, perhaps an hour left until full dark. The beach was a stony spit clogged with low-tide sea wrack, but it was beautiful to me, more beautiful than any champagne white tourist beach back home. It meant we had made it. What it meant to the others I could hardly imagine. Most of them hadn't been off Cairnholm in a lifetime. And now they gazed around in wonder, bewildered to still be alive and wondering what on earth to do about it. We staggered from our boats with legs made of rubber. Fiona scooped a handful of slimy pebbles into her mouth and rolled them over her tongue as if she needed all 5 senses to convince herself she wasn't dreaming, which was just how I'd felt about being in Miss Peregrine's loop at first. I had never, in all my life, so distrusted my own eyes. Bronwyn groaned and sank to the ground, exhausted beyond words. She was surrounded and fussed over and showered with thanks for all she'd done. But it was awkward. Our debt was too great, and the words thank you too small, and she tried to wave us away, but was so tired she could barely raise her hand. Meanwhile, Emma and the boys reeled Olive down from the clouds. "You're positively blue!" Emma exclaimed when Olive appeared through the fog, and she leapt up to pull the little girl into her arms. Olive was soaked and frozen, her teeth chattering. There were no blankets, not even a stitch of dry clothing to give her, so Emma ran her ever-hot hands around Olive's body until the worst of her shudders subsided, then sent Fiona and Horace away to gather driftwood for a fire. While waiting for their return, we gathered round the boats to take stock of all we'd lost at sea. It was a grim tally. Nearly everything we'd brought now littered the sea floor. What we had left were the clothes on our backs, a small amount of food in rusty tins, and Bronwyn's tank-sized steamer trunk, indestructible and apparently unsinkable, and so absurdly heavy that only Bronwyn herself could ever hope to carry it. We tore open its metal latches, eager to find something useful, or better yet, edible. But all it held was a 3-volume collection of stories called Tales of the Peculiar. The pages spongy with seawater, and a fancy bath mat embroidered with the letters A.L.P., Miss Peregrine's initials. "Oh, thank heaven someone remembered the bath mat," Enoch deadpanned. "We're saved." Everything else was gone, including both our maps, the small one Emma had used to navigate us across the channel, and the massive leather-bound loop atlas that had been Millard's prized possession, the Map of Days. When Millard realized it was gone, he began to hyperventilate. "That was one out of only 5 extant copies," he moaned. "It was of incalculable value, not to mention it contained years of my personal notes and annotations." "At least we still have the Tales of the Peculiar," said Claire, wringing seawater from her blonde curls. "I can't get to sleep at night without hearing one." "What good are fairy tales if we can't even find our way?" Millard asked. I wondered, find our way to where? It occurred to me that in our rush to escape the island, I had only ever heard the children talk about reaching the mainland, but we'd never discussed what to do once we got there, as if the idea of actually surviving the journey in those tiny boats was so far-fetched, so comically optimistic, that planning for it was a waste of time. I looked to Emma for reassurance, as I often did. She gazed darkly down the beach. The stony sand backed up to low dunes swaying with sawgrass. Beyond was forest, an impenetrable-looking barrier of green that continued in both directions as far as I could see. Emma, with her now lost map, had been aiming for a certain port town, but after the storm hit, just making it to dry land had become our goal. There was no telling how far we'd strayed off course. There were no roads I could see, or signposts, or even footpaths. Only wilderness. Of course, we didn't really need a map, or a signpost, or anything else. We needed Miss Peregrine, a whole, healed one, The Miss Peregrine who would know just where to go and how to get us there safely. The one perched before us now, fanning her feathers dry on a boulder, was as broken as her maimed wing, which hooked downward in an alarming V. I could tell it pained the children to see her like this. She was supposed to be their mother, their protector. She'd been queen of their little island world, but now she couldn't speak, couldn't loop time, couldn't even fly. They saw her and winced and looked away. Miss Peregrine kept her eyes trained on the slate-gray sea. They were hard and black and contained unutterable sorrow. They seemed to say, "I failed you." Horace and Fiona arced toward us through the rocky sand, the wind poofing Fiona's wild hair like a storm cloud, Horace bouncing with his hands pressed against the sides of his top hat to keep it secure on his head. Somehow, he had kept hold of it throughout our near disaster at sea, but now it was stove in on one side like a bent muffler pipe. Still, he refused to let it go. It was the only thing, he said, that matched his muddy, sopping, finely tailored suit. Their arms were empty. "There's no wood anywhere," Horace said as they reached us. "Did you look in the woods?" said Emma, pointing at the dark line of trees behind the dunes. "Too scary," Horace replied. "We heard an owl." "Since when are you afraid of birds?" Horace shrugged and looked at the sand. Then Fiona elbowed him, and he seemed to remember himself, and said, "We found something else, though." "Shelter?" asked Emma. "A road?" asked Millard. "A goose to cook for supper?" asked Claire. "No," Horace replied. "Balloons." There was a brief, puzzled silence. "What do you mean, balloons?" said Emma. "Big ones in the sky with men inside." Emma's face darkened. "Show us." We followed them back the way they'd come, curving around a bend in the beach and climbing a small embankment. I wondered how we could possibly miss something as obvious as hot air balloons until we crested a hill and I saw them. Not the big, colorful, teardrop-shaped things you see in wall calendars and motivational posters, "The sky's the limit," but a pair of miniature zeppelins, black, egg-shaped sacks of gas with skeletal cages hung below them, each containing a single pilot. The craft were small and flew low, banking back and forth in lazy zigzags, and the noise of the surf had covered the subtle whine of their propellers. Emma herded us into the tall sawgrass, and we dropped down out of sight. It says my connection's good. Smokey, say hi to Smokey for me. Wait, hey, okay. "They're submarine hunters," Enoch said, answering the question before anyone had asked it. Millard might have been the authority when it came to maps and books, but Enoch was an expert in all things military. "The best way to spot enemy subs is from the sky," he explained. "Then why are they flying so close to the ground?" I asked. "And why aren't they farther out to sea?" "That I don't know." "Do you think they could be looking for us?" Horace ventured. If you mean could they be whites, said Hugh, don't be daft. The whites are with the Germans. They're on that German sub. The whites are allied with whomever it suits their interest to be allied with, Millard said. There's no reason to think they haven't infiltrated organizations on both sides of the war. I couldn't take my eyes off the strange contraptions in the sky. They looked unnatural, like mechanical insects bloated with tumorous eggs. I don't like the way they're flying, Enoch said, calculating behind his sharp eyes. They're searching the coastline, not the sea. Searching for what? Asked Bronwyn, but the answer was obvious and frightening, and no one wanted to say it aloud. They were searching for us. We were all squeezed together in the grass, and I felt Emma's body tense next to mine. Run when I say run, she hissed. We'll hide the boats, then ourselves. We waited for the balloons to zag away, then tumbled out of the grass, praying we were too far away to be spotted. As we ran, I found myself wishing that the fog, which had plagued us at sea, would return again to hide us. It occurred to me that it had very likely saved us once already. Without the fog, those balloons would have spotted us hours ago in our boats, when we'd had nowhere to run, and in that way, it was one last thing that the island had done to save its peculiar children. And I have a picture for you all. We dragged our boats across the beach toward a sea cave, its entrance a black fissure in a hill of rocks. Bronwyn had spent her strength completely and could hardly manage to carry herself, much less the boats, so the rest of us struggled to pick up the slack, groaning and straining against hulls that kept trying to bury their noses in the wet sand. Halfway across the beach, Miss Peregrine let out a warning cry, and the two Zeppelins bobbed up over the dunes and into our line of sight. We broke into an adrenaline-fueled sprint, flying those boats into the cave like they were on rails, while Miss Peregrine hopped lamely alongside us, her broken wing dragging in the sand. Oh, good kitty. When we were finally out of sight, we dropped the boats and flopped onto their overturned keels, our wheezing breaths echoing in the damp and dripping dark. Please, please let them not have seen us, Emma prayed aloud. Oh, birds! Our tracks! Millard yelped, and then he stripped off the overcoat he'd been wearing and scrambled back outside to cover the drag marks our boats had made. From the sky, they'd look like arrows pointing right to our hiding place. We could only watch his footsteps trail away. If anyone but Millard had ventured out, they'd have been seen for sure. A minute later, he came back, shivering, caked in sand, a red stain outlining his chest. They're getting close now, he panted. I did the best I could. You're bleeding again, Bronwyn fretted. Millard had been grazed by a bullet during our melee at the lighthouse the previous night, and though his recovery so far was remarkable, it was far from complete. What have you done with your wound dressing? I threw it away. It was tied in such a complicated manner that I couldn't remove it quickly. An invisible must always be able to disrobe in an instant, or his power is useless. He's even more useless dead, you stubborn mule, said Emma. Now hold still and don't bite your tongue. This is going to hurt. She squeezed 2 fingers in the palm of her opposite hand, concentrated for a moment, and when she took them out again, they glowed red hot. Millard balked. "Now then, Emma, I'd rather you didn't." Emma pressed her fingers to his wounded shoulder. Millard gasped. There was the sound of singeing meat, and a curl of smoke rose up from his skin. In a moment, the bleeding stopped. "I'll have a scar," Millard whined. "Yes? And who'll see it?" He sulked and said nothing. The balloon's engines grew louder, then louder still, amplified by the cave's stone walls. I pictured them hovering above the cave, studying our footprints, preparing their assault. Emma leaned her shoulder into mine. The little ones ran to Bronwyn and buried their faces in her lap, and she hugged them. Despite our peculiar powers, we felt utterly powerless. It was all we could do to sit hunched and blinking at one another in the pale half-light, noses running from the cold, hoping our enemies would pass us by. Finally, the engine's whine began to dwindle, and when we could hear our own voices again, Claire mumbled into Bronwyn's lap. "Tell us a story, Win. I'm scared, and I don't like this at all, and I think I'd like to hear a story instead." "Yes, would you tell one?" Olive pleaded. "A story from the tales, please. They're my favorite." The most maternal of the peculiars, Bronwyn was more like a mother to the young ones than even Miss Peregrine. It was Bronwyn who tucked them into bed at night, Bronwyn who read them stories and kissed their foreheads. Her strong arms seemed made to gather them in warm embraces, her broad shoulders to carry them. But this was no time for stories, and she said as much. "Why, certainly it is," Enoch said with a sing-songy sarcasm. "But skip the tales for once and tell us the story of how Miss Peregrine's wards found their way to safety without a map or any food, and weren't eaten by Hologas along the way. I'm ever so keen to hear how that story ends." "If only Miss Peregrine could tell us," Claire sniffed. She disentangled herself from Bronwyn and went to the bird who'd been watching us from her perch on one of the boat's overturned keels. "What are we to do, headmistress?" said Claire. "Please turn human again. Please wake up." Miss Peregrine cooed and stroked Claire's hair with her wing. Then Olive joined in, her face streaking with tears. "We need you, Miss Peregrine. We're lost and in danger and increasingly peckish, and we've got no home anymore, nor any friends but one another, and we need you." Miss Peregrine's black eyes shimmered. She turned away, unreachable. Bronwyn knelt down beside the girls. "She can't turn back now, sweetheart, but we'll get her fixed up, I promise." "But how?" Olive demanded. Her question reflected off the stone walls, each echo asking it again. Emma stood up. "I'll tell you how," she said, and all eyes went to her. "We'll walk." She said it with such conviction that I got a chill. "We'll walk and walk until we come to a town." "What if there's no town for 50 miles?" said Enoch. "Then we'll walk for 51 miles. But I know we weren't blown that far off course." "And if the whites should spot us from the air?" said Hugh. "They won't. We'll be careful." "And if they're waiting for us in the town?" said Horace. "We'll pretend to be normal. We'll pass." "I was never much good at that," Millard said with a laugh. "You won't be seen at all, Mill. You'll be our advance scout, and our secret procurer of necessary items." "I am quite a talented thief," he said with a touch of pride. "A veritable master of the five-fingered arts." "And then," Enoch muttered sourly, "maybe we'll have food in our bellies and a warm place to sleep, but we'll still be out in the open, exposed." vulnerable, loopless, and Miss Peregrine it's still... We'll find a loop somehow, said Emma. There are landmarks and signposts for those who know what to look for, and if there aren't, we'll find someone like us, a fellow peculiar who can show us where the nearest loop is. And in that loop, there will be an Imbrin, and that Imbrin will be able to give Miss Peregrine the help she needs. I'd never met anyone with Emma's brash confidence. Everything about her exuded it. The way she carried herself, with shoulders thrown back, the hard set of her teeth when she made up her mind about something, the way she ended every sentence with a declarative period, never a question mark. It was infectious, and I loved it, and I had to fight a sudden urge to kiss her right there in front of everyone. Hugh coughed, and bees tumbled out of his mouth to form a question mark that shivered in the air. "How can you be so bloody sure?" he asked. "Because I am, that's all." And she brushed her hands as if that were that. "You make a nice rousing speech," said Millard, "and I hate to spoil it, but for all we know, Miss Peregrine is the only Imbrin left uncaptured. Recall what Miss Avocet told us. The Whites have been raiding loops and abducting Imbrins for weeks now, which means that even if we could find a loop, there'd be no way of knowing whether it still had its Imbrin, or was occupied instead by our enemies. We can't simply go knocking on loop doors and hoping they aren't full of Whites." "Or surrounded by half-starved hollows," Enoch said. "We won't have to hope," Emma said, then smiled in my direction. "Jacob will tell us." My entire body went cold. "Me?" "You can sense hollows from a distance, can't you?" said Emma. "In addition to seeing them?" "When they're close, it kind of feels like I'm gonna puke," I admitted. "How close do they have to be?" asked Millard. "If it's only a few meters, that still puts us within devouring range. We need you to sense them from much farther away." "I haven't exactly tested it," I said. "This is all so new to me." I'd only ever been exposed to Dr. Golin's hollow, Malthus, the creature who'd killed my grandfather, then nearly drowned me in Cairnholm's bog. How far away had he been when I'd first felt him stalking me? Lurking outside my house in Englewood? It was impossible to know. "Regardless, your talent can be developed," said Millard. "Peculiarities are a bit like muscles. The more you exercise them, the bigger they grow." "This is madness," Enoch said. "Are you all really so desperate that you'd stake everything on him?" "Why, he's just a boy, a soft-bellied normal who knows next to nothing about our world." "He isn't normal," Emma said, grimacing as if this were the direst insult. "He's one of us." "Stuff and rubbish," yelled Enoch. "Just because there's a dash of peculiar blood in his veins doesn't make him my brother, and it certainly doesn't make him my protector. We don't know what he's capable of. He probably wouldn't know the difference between a hollow at 50 meters and gas pain." "He killed one of them, didn't he?" said Bronwyn. "Stabbed it through the eyes with a pair of sheep shears. When's the last time you heard of a peculiar so young doing anything like that?" "Not since Abe," Hugh said, and at the mention of his name a reverent hush fell over the children. "I heard he once killed one with his bare hands," said Bronwyn. "I heard he killed one with a knitting needle and a length of twine," said Horace. "In fact, I dreamed it, so I'm sure he did." "Half of those stories are just tall tales, and they get taller with every year that passes," said Enoch. "The Abraham Portman I knew never did a single thing to help us." "He was a great peculiar," said Bronwyn. "He fought bravely and killed scores of hollows for our cause." "And then he ran off and left us to hide in that house like refugees while he gallivanted around America playing hero. You don't know what you're talking about, Emma said, flushing with anger. There was a lot more to it than that. Enoch shrugged. Anyway, that's all beside the point, he said. Whatever you thought of Abe, this boy isn't him. In that moment, I hated Enoch, and yet I couldn't blame him for his doubts about me. How could the others, so sure and seasoned in their abilities, put so much faith in mine, in something I was only beginning to understand and had known I was capable of for only a few days? Whose grandson I was seemed irrelevant. I simply didn't know what I was doing. You're right. I'm not my grandfather, I said. I'm just a kid from Florida. I probably got lucky when I killed that Hollow. Nonsense, said Emma. You'll be every bit the Hollow Slayer Abe was one day. One day soon, let's hope, said Hugh. It's your destiny, said Horace, and the way he said it made me think he knew something I didn't. And even if it ain't, said Hugh, clapping his hand on my back, you're all we've got, mate. If that's true, bird help us all, said Enoch. My head was spinning, the weight of their expectations threatening to crush me. I stood unsteady and moved toward the cave exit. I need some air, I said, pushing past Enoch. Jacob, wait, cried Emma. The balloons! But they were long gone. Let him go, Enoch grumbled. If we're lucky, he'll swim back to America. Here's a picture. Hold on. Pond. Sorry, pond is in. I should go over the top of pond, who is not happy about it. Okay. Pond, you doing okay? Good, Pond. Okay. Walking down to the water's edge, I tried to picture myself the way my new friends saw me, or wanted to. Not as Jacob, the kid who once broke his ankle running after an ice cream truck, or who reluctantly and at the behest of his dad tried and failed 3 times to get onto his school's non-competitive track team, but as Jacob, inspector of shadows, miraculous interpreter of squirmy gut feelings, seer and slayer of real and actual monsters, and all that might stand between life and death for our merry band of peculiars. How could I ever live up to my grandfather's legacy? I climbed a stack of rocks at the water's edge and stood there, hoping the steady breeze would dry my damp clothes, and in the dying light I watched the sea, a canvas of shifting grays, melded and darkening. In the distance, a light glinted every so often. It was Cairnholm's lighthouse, flashing its hello and last goodbye. My mind drifted. I lapsed into a waking dream. I see a man. He is of middle age, cloaked in excremental mud, crabbing slowly along the knife tip of a cliff, his thin hair uncombed and hanging wet across his face. Wind whips his thin jacket like a sail. He stops, drops to his elbows, slips them into divots he'd made weeks before when he was scouting these coves for mating terns and shearwaters' nests. He raised a pair of binoculars to his eyes, but aims them low, below the nest, at a thin crescent of beach where the swelling tide collects things and heaves them up. Driftwood and seaweed, shards of smashed boats, and sometimes, the locals say, bodies. The man is my father. He is looking for something that he desperately does not want to find. He is looking for the body of his son. I felt a touch on my shoe and opened my eyes, startled out of my half-dream. It was nearly dark, and I was sitting on the rocks with my knees drawn into my chest, and suddenly there was Emma, breeze tossing her hair, standing on the sand below me. "How are you?" she asked. It was a question that would have required some college-level math and about an hour of discussion to answer. I felt 100 conflicting things, the great bulk of which canceled out to equal cold and tired and not particularly interested in talking. So I said, "I'm fine, just trying to dry off," and flapped the front of my soggy sweater to demonstrate. "I can help you with that." She clambered up the stack of rocks and sat next to me. "Give me an arm." I offered one up, and Emma laid it across her knees. Cupping her hands over her mouth, she bent her head towards my wrist. Then, taking a deep breath, she exhaled slowly through her palms, and an incredible soothing heat bloomed along my forearm, just on the edge of painful. "Is it too much?" she said. I tensed, a shudder going through me, and shook my head. "Good." She moved farther up my arm to exhale again, another pulse of sweet warmth. Between breaths, she said, "I hope you're not letting what Enoch said bother you. The rest of us believe in you, Jacob. Enoch can be a wrinkle-hearted old titmouse, especially when he's feeling jealous." "I think he's right," I said. "You don't really, do you?" It all came pouring out. "I have no idea what I'm doing," I said. "How can any of you depend on me? If I'm really peculiar, then it's just a little bit, I think. Like I'm a quarter peculiar and the rest of you guys are full-blooded." "It doesn't work that way," she said, laughing. "But my grandfather was more peculiar than me. He had to be. He was so strong." "No, Jacob," she said, narrowing her eyes at me. "It's astounding in so many ways. You're just like him. You're different, too, of course. You're gentler and sweeter. But everything you're saying, you sound like Abe when he first came to stay with us." "I do?" "Yes. He was confused, too. He'd never met another peculiar. He didn't understand his power or how it worked or what he was capable of. Neither did we, to tell the truth. It's very rare what you can do. Very rare. But your grandfather learned." "How?" I asked. "Where?" "In the war. He was part of a secret all-peculiar cell of the British Army. Fought Holocaust and Germans at the same time. The sorts of things they did you don't win medals for, but they were heroes to us. And none more than your grandfather. The sacrifices they made set the corrupted back decades and saved the lives of countless peculiars." And yet, I thought, he couldn't save his own parents. How strangely tragic. "And I can tell you this," Emma went on. "You're every bit as peculiar as he was. And as brave, too." "You're just trying to make me feel better." "No," she said, looking me in the eye. "I'm not. You'll learn, Jacob. One day you'll be an even greater Hollow Slayer than he was." "Yeah, that's what everyone keeps saying. How can you be so sure?" "It's something I feel very deeply," she said. "You're supposed to, I think. Just like you were supposed to come to Cairnholm." "I don't believe in stuff like that. Fate, the stars, destiny." "I didn't say destiny. Supposed to is the same thing," I said. "Destiny is for people in books about magical swords. It's a lot of crap. I'm here because my grandfather mumbled something about your island in the 10 seconds before he died, and that's it. It was an accident. I'm glad he did, but he was delirious. He could just as easily have rattled off a grocery list. But he didn't, she said. I sighed, exasperated. And if we go off in search of loops, and you depend on me to save you from monsters, and instead I get you all killed, is that destiny too? She frowned, put my arm back in my lap. I didn't say destiny, she said again. What I believe is that when it comes to big things in life, there are no accidents. Everything happens for a reason. You're here for a reason, and it's not to fail and die. I didn't have the heart to keep arguing. Okay, I said. I don't think you're right, but I do hope you are. I felt bad for snapping at her, but I'd been cold and scared and feeling defensive. I had good moments and bad, terrified thoughts and confident ones, though my terror to confidence ratio was pretty dismal at present, like 3-1, and in that terrified moments I felt like I was being pushed into a role I hadn't asked for, volunteered for frontline duty in a war, the full scope of which none of us yet knew. Destiny sounded like an obligation, and if I was to be thrust into battle against a legion of nightmare creatures, that had to be my choice. Though in a sense, the choice had been made already, when I agreed to sail into the unknown with these peculiar children. And it wasn't true. If I really searched the dusty corners of myself that I hadn't asked for this, really, I'd been dreaming of such adventures since I was small. Back then, I believed in destiny, and believed in it absolutely, with every strand and fiber of my little kid heart. I'd felt it like an itch in my chest while listening to my grandfather's extraordinary stories. One day, that will be me. What felt like obligation now had been a promise back then, that one day I would escape my little town and live an extraordinary life, as he had done, and that one day, like Grandpa Portman, I would do something that mattered. He used to say to me, "You're going to be a great man, Jacob, a very great man." "Like you?" I would ask him. "Better," he'd reply. I believed him then, and I still wanted to, but the more I learned about him, the longer his shadow became, and the more impossible it seemed that I could ever matter the way he had. That maybe it would be suicidal, even, to try. And when I imagined myself trying, thoughts of my father crept in. My poor, about-to-be devastated father. And before I could push them out of my mind, I wondered how a great man could do something so terrible to someone who loved him. I began to shiver. "You're cold," Emma said. "Let me finish what I started." She picked up my other arm and kissed with her breath the whole length of it. It was almost more than I could handle. When she reached my shoulder, instead of placing the arm in my lap, she hung it around her neck. I lifted my other arm to join it, and she put her arms around me too, and our foreheads nodded together. Speaking very quietly, Emma said, "I hope you don't regret the choice you made. I'm so glad you're here with us. I don't know what I'd do if you left. I fear I wouldn't be all right at all." I thought about going back. For a moment I really tried to play it out in my head, how it would be if I could somehow row one of our boats back to the island again and go back home. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't imagine. I whispered, "How could I?" "When Miss Peregrine turns human again, she'll be able to send you back, if you want to go." My question hadn't been about logistics. I had meant simply, how could I leave you? But those words were unsayable. Couldn't find their way past my lips, so I held them inside, and instead I kissed her. This time it was Emma whose breath caught short. Her hands rose to my cheeks but stopped just shy of making contact. Heat radiated from them in waves. "Touch me," I said. "I don't want to burn you," she said, but a sudden shower of sparks inside my chest said, "I don't care." So I took her fingers and raked them along my cheek, and both of us gasped. It was hot, but I didn't pull away, dared not, for fear she'd stop touching me. And then our lips met again, and we were kissing again, and our extraordinary warmth surged through me. My eyes fell closed. The world faded away. If my body was cold in the night mist, I didn't feel it. If the sea roared in my ears, I didn't hear it. If the rock I sat on was sharp and jagged, I hardly noticed. Everything outside the two of us was a distraction. And then a great crash echoed in the dark. But I thought nothing of it. Could not take myself away from Emma, until the sound doubled and was joined by an awful shriek of metal, and a blinding light swept over us. And finally, I couldn't shut it out anymore. "The lighthouse," I thought. "The lighthouse is falling into the sea." But the lighthouse was a pinpoint in the distance, not a sun-bright flash, and its light only traveled in one direction, not back and forth searching. It wasn't a lighthouse at all. It was a searchlight, and it was coming from the water close to shore. It was the searchlight of a submarine. Brief second of terror in which brain and legs were disconnected. My eyes and ears registered the submarine not far from shore, metal beast rising from the sea, water rushing from its sides, men bursting onto its deck from open hatches, shouting, training cannons of light at us. And then the stimulus reached my legs and we slid, fell and pitched ourselves down from the rocks and ran like hell. The spotlight threw our pistoning shadows across the beach, 10 feet tall and freakish. Bullets pocked the sand and buzzed the air. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "Stop! Do not run!" We burst into the cave. "They're coming! They're here! Get up! Get up!" But the children had heard the commotion and were already on their feet. All but Bronwyn, who had so exhausted herself at sea that she had fallen asleep against the cave wall and couldn't be roused. We shook her and shouted in her face, but she only moaned and brushed us away with a sweep of her arm. Finally, we had to hoist her up by the waist, which was like lifting a tower of bricks. But once her feet touched the ground, her red-rimmed eyelids split open, and she took her own weight. We grabbed up our things, thankful now that there were so small and so few. Emma scooped Miss Peregrine into her arms. We tore outside. As we ran into the dunes, I saw behind us a gang of silhouetted men splashing the last few feet to shore. In their hands, held above their heads to keep them dry, were guns. We sprinted through a strand of wind-blown trees and into the trackless forest. Darkness enveloped us. What moon wasn't already hidden behind clouds was blotted out now by trees, branches filtering its pale light to nil. There was no time for our eyes to adjust or to feel our way carefully or to do anything other than run in a gasping, stumbling herd with arms outstretched, dodging trunks that seemed to coalesce suddenly in the air just inches from us. After a few minutes we stopped, chest heaving, to listen. The voices were still behind us, only now they were joined by another sound. Dogs barking. We ran on. And that is the end of chapter 2. Good kid. No. They don't get a break in this one. They get no time. Exactly. Once again, I like to claim no responsibility for Ransom Riggs ending his chapters in weird spots. It's not my problem. I didn't do that. Isn't that right, Pond? Not my fault, right? You believe in me. Pond believes in me. So cute. Okay. Adorable. Okay. She's just been laying here quietly. I'm so surprised. Normally she's not this chill. She'll like try and knock over the ring light. Normally she's only chill if I'm by myself and I'm just trying to read by myself. Like if I'm not reading out loud, she'll lay here for hours. If I'm talking, she's like, I'm gonna knock down every electronic in this room. Like if I have a ring light set up, it's going down, baby. Like it's gone. It's gone. But strangely enough, she's very content. She's making me very content. Speaking of cats, we have cat facts. Who wants a cat fact? For your weekly cat. Cat facts. Okay. We are ending a little earlier today. There's cat fur in the cat book, which I think is somewhat appropriate. We're gonna do the sand cat because it looks adorable. Okay. Or did we do the sand cat all day? I thought we did the rusty spotted cat last time, but I don't remember. Ooh. You okay? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I booped her with the book. I didn't think we had, but I'm always like very confident before the live starts, and then afterward I'm like, am I confident though? What have we done? So I like to make sure. So I'm sure someone else has a better recollection of what I'm doing every week than me. I like black out this entire thing, and then I wake up the next morning and I'm like, what happened? So I retain very little of this. Sand cat. The black-footed cat lives in very dry regions, but the sand cat is the only desert-dwelling wildcat. Its habitat stretches from Morocco across Saharan Africa and into the Middle East, with sightings as far northeast as Kazakhstan. Sand cats grow to be about 6 pounds, standing 10 to 12 inches in height at the shoulder, and with a body about 1.5 feet long. For desert creatures, being very small can be a huge advantage. Small, compact animals can require and lose less moisture. Many desert animals spend the long, hot days burrowing underground or beneath the shelter of rocks and plants, and a smaller animal can more easily find a safe, cool spot. The sand cat's relatively small paws have fluffy tufts of hair that cover their undersides, letting the cat safely run around on the hot sand. Cats who live in snowy climates have developed fluffy paws for their opposite problem with cold. Like many other wild cats, the sand cat has a large enough population that it isn't in danger of extinction, but extreme weather caused by climate change will make their habitats much harder to live in. You okay? I'm sorry, I held a book above your face and then I accidentally booped you. I'm sorry I booped you. It's my bad. Yeah, and so I'm like, what's the last cat picture that I saw? And then I'm like, I'm very confident because if we did do that, there would be a picture of it. And I'm like, but that's not their job, though. That's not like your job. I didn't ascribe to you that position. Just walked into it. So like, I'm like, I can't expect them to do that for every cat. What if they didn't do that last time? And then I'm like, they would have done it. Come on. They would have done it. Be real. And then I'm always like, but what if that's the wrong one? What if I... But what if... And then I doubt myself. Hello. Yeah? My foot's asleep. I don't know if you knew that, but I am very aware of it. She's totally chill here. And I just can't move. I just can't move my foot. But I can't feel it, and I feel like that's dangerous. Well, I haven't been editing the lives anymore. I'm working on too many actual projects to... I believe I may have mentioned it, but maybe I didn't. I'm not editing the TikTok lives anymore. If I've downloaded it from TikTok, I have not done anything to it anymore. I'm not doing that. I used to try to do that, and it got too... my foot. Here, scooch up a little bit. I'm sorry, I can't feel it. Oh, it's all tingly. So, I have stopped doing that. And I always mean to do it right after the live ends, but by then, I'm going to be very honest with you. I have to piss so bad that it takes a backseat like to that. And I'm like, no, we have to go to the bathroom. You drink a whole glass of water and like a coffee in 2 hours, and you're gonna piss yourself if you don't go now. Which is why this live is exactly as long as it is, because I know how long I can go without without going to the bathroom. And then I forget, because I also get on Discord right after that. So Dad gets here, and then anything else flies out the window, and I'm like, I was supposed to do something. Forgot what that is, so it's fine. I'll figure it out. I could have found my own system. I should be responsible for myself and my content. I need to step up. I'm not doing... I could be better. The light changed. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, I have another light that lights up my wig stands, and I realized today that it didn't come with a remote. It's an older light, but it like has several different color settings in it. But it responds to this light's remote somehow. And I didn't realize that it did that. I just didn't realize. And I was like, Dave, come in here and check this out. This is not the light that came with this remote, but it still swaps it. And I tried to set it to purple, but it changes with this light now, and now it's bugging me. Turn purple. I don't know if it's... I don't know. I do a lot, but I feel like I do so many things that I don't do any of them well. You know what I mean? I feel like I spread myself so thin trying to do so many different things that I don't actually do anything to the fullest capacity that I could do it, if that makes sense. But I enjoy everything that I'm doing, and I don't want to like stop doing stuff. I suppose there's a way that I could maximize my output. I'll have to go through stuff. Your PS4 responds to your lights. I do appreciate the help. I really do. Because I would be completely capable of pulling off half this stuff without some of you coming in on the back end. Like, I'll post all the pictures. I had to go re-record 9 and 10. And I literally, for the pictures and the YouTube, if you go and listen to 9 and 10 on YouTube, the recordings that I did, I did include the pictures in the relevant time frames that they are in on the video, so it'll show you the book cover, but as you go through it, once it hits a picture, I did incorporate those in there. I got all those from the Discord because Crimson has been keeping track. If Crimson hadn't, I would have had to find them. I would have had to go and take pictures of my physical book, which would have been terrible. Bad lighting. But, or look them up on the internet. But they were so convenient having them in the Discord. And I'm like, thank God for Crimson right now, because I don't have to go and scout for it, which is very nice. And yeah, I literally gave you homework at the start of this. I was like, whoever is listening to chapter 10, tell me if it sounds like alien radio, because I don't want to go back and listen to chapter 10 again. Good night, Lady. We should be going here in a few minutes anyway, because we're gonna move over to Discord and play Binding of Isaac. It'll be a fun time. I beat Mega Satan. Do I know how I did it? No. I don't remember anything. It was like a haze. I'll explain it in more detail in the Discord, but I think I unlocked the secret to getting far. I'm trying to beat Hush now, which is like a timed run. So that'll be interesting to try and do on Discord. I don't know what it is. You can't. It is my firm belief that every achievement that I have gotten in Binding of Isaac, every major achievement, every major ending, I have been in some sort of fugue state where I've been like half awake, half asleep, just like. And the thing is I didn't even like celebrate it. There was no like, yeah, I beat Mega Satan. I immediately was just like, okay. And I set the game down and picked up my phone and texted Dad and was like, I beat Mega Satan. Placed phone down. Picked it back up and then immediately I didn't enjoy it at all. And I realized it afterward and I was like, man, I didn't even take a minute to congratulate myself on the thing that I've been trying to do for over a month now. didn't even occur to me. And I was just like right back into it. All right, here we go. And I realized I was just in the weirdest fugue state where I was so focused. I was laser focused. It was fantastic. I don't know how I did it. I hope. Yeah, you don't even recognize that you did anything momentous. You're like, man, this is taking so long. I beat Isaac, then immediately died. Oh no. Wait, did you get the ending, or like you hit the finish blow and then one of the tears got you and then you died or something? Because I hate it when that happens. That's happened to me too many times, and I've been so upset by it. Good kitten. Good kitten. Who's a good Pond? Pond's being a very good cat. Very relaxed. I got hit by his tear before the ending. One time I beat Mom's Heart. One of the first times, like, I was still struggling to beat Mom's Heart. And I went to go... I beat Mom's Heart. It did the whole, like, Isaac, and then it exploded. And then the ammo shot out. And I was already rushing forward to hit the chest. And one of the last ones from that explosion hit me, and I died. And when I tell you, I was ready to burn that game to the ground. I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. And I'm pretty sure I just stopped for a second and sat there and looked down at the game, and then I was like, I can't be here right now. And I turned the game off and went to bed. Like, that's how mad I was. I took a picture. Yes. Binding of Isaac is one of those things where it's so hard. You're like, pics or it didn't happen. Because, because you could... I mean, technically your stats page shows that you beat whatever it was, but still half the time you're just like, bruh. That's why I'm big mad. Oh no. Oh no. It's terrible. I'm so sorry. That's the worst. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the bathroom. And we're gonna move over to the Discord and play Binding of Isaac with Dad, probably. Or whatever you guys want to see, I suppose. I was gonna play Binding of Isaac, but if y'all have a better idea, I'm open to it. And I will see you guys in a few minutes. Thank you for joining me. We'll be here next Tuesday at 8, same time, to read chapters 3 and 4, possibly. I know at least 3, but I'm still working on spacing for this book because we're going to have an extant chapter at some point. But I will see you guys in the Discord, and if I don't, I'll see you next week.